All right, just a quick one before we get going. So please don't take anything you hear in today's episode as financial advice. Please speak to a trained professional if you do wish to participate in markets. Crypto is inherently risky and you will lose all your money, particularly if you listen to us for financial direction. So enough of that. Please give us a like, subscribe, enjoy the show, and see you next time. All right, welcome back to another episode of DYOR. I hope you all enjoyed the Solana Deepin article and the video that accompanied it. They had some really, really good reviews. The numbers are actually great on that. And what everyone won't be privy to is we can kind of see on the back end the analytics stuff, particularly for the website, what people are really interested in. And
Ooh.
I'll let you in. I'll let you into a little secret. They really like Deepin. so take from that what you will. But yeah, 563, how are we doing?
Doing good, man. Happy to be back. This one should be fun. I've been looking forward to this one for a while.
Yeah, so everyone who's tuning in as a regular listen to this segment, there will be one every other week of these. As I say, they take quite a while to kind of do the legwork on them, but they will be consistent going forward. And this week is on the hot topic of the industry, liquid restaking and LRTs and all the good stuff that comes off the back of it. So we're going to be covering what it is high level, going into why this makes sense now, who the big players are, who the small players are, who are the players that you've never heard of, because I've only just found them myself 2 days ago. So where do you want to start?
Yeah, I think it makes sense to start like at the very basic level what staking is. And then we can dive into what the differences between that and restaking are, and then why LRTs make sense, and then talk about some of the different projects building. But yeah, man. So I guess we can start with staking. I think most folks know that Ethereum runs on proof of stake. So you have, oh, nice. Yeah, you got the slides. Yeah. So Ethereum runs on proof of stake. So you have these validator networks in the works already. In order to secure the network, you as a validator put up your stake at 32 ETH per validator. And then you're running the network, and at the risk of being slashed if you misbehave, which means you lose some of your stake, but you get the reward of some staking rewards, which currently about 3 or 4% per year. And that's a pretty good deal for a lot of people, really. But a lot of people really would love a little bit extra, a little bit better yield than 3 or 4%. And you can think of new networks spinning up if you're an Oracle network or a layer 2 or a bridge, and you would really love to bootstrap your own consensus, but you don't really want to bootstrap an entire validator set. You could just plug back into that giant behemoth of a security that is the Ethereum staking network. So that's the whole idea behind restaking, is you're taking this giant economic security that Ethereum staking already has in all their validator nodes and repurposing it. They call it rehypothecating it to these other networks. So you're just borrowing Ethereum security. So these nodes that are borrowing the security, or these protocols that are borrowing security, they pay the nodes. So if you're a validator in the Ethereum network and you restake, you're getting some extra money for restaking and for protecting these other networks. But you're also putting yourself at risk because you're not only at the risk of being slashed by the Ethereum consensus, you could also be slashed by these other consensus. So more risk, more rewards, because that's how it works. And yeah, I think we can dive. Do you have any questions or more points on that before we get into LRTs?
I think just thinking back to the turn of the year in 2013, and it seems like obviously with the merge, and then we had the Chappelle upgrade, like liquid staking tokens definitely caught a very, very strong bid, even in a pretty terrible year for the market at the beginning of Q1 2023. The big players of Lido, Rocket Pool, Stader, Stakewise, a lot of like a Swell more recently who are doing really well. I'm pretty sure we'll cover them a little bit later, but it's all culminated to this, and it feels like particularly probably Q2 2023, Q3 2023, the words like Eigen Layer start getting thrown around, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. But this is just kind of the next iterations of that, and I personally think it's just going to steal the show throughout 2024. I don't think there's anything on the horizon that is going to be as impactful of this, better or worse. Yeah, so hopefully we can kind of give you a high level of what this all is and pick apart some of the projects that we're kind of interested in as well.
Yeah, I'm really excited about Eigenlayer. I think once it clicks for people, they start getting really excited about the possibilities behind restaking. As long as you address the risks, because there are risks, because you're taking on additional layers of consensus here. But yeah, we can dive into it. So LSTs, LRTs. So the main benefit of having a liquid staking token, like Steth or Rocket Pool's Reeth, is you don't have to spin up, or you don't have to run the hardware yourself. You don't have to come up with 32 ETH. You don't have to have this server somewhere or build your own server, and you don't have to run the consensus software. You can outsource all of that to another organization, whether that's Lido or Rocket Pool or one of the other ones. And so you just give them your ETH, they go and stake it, and you get this receipt token, this LST. And they take a little bit of the fee for the staking rewards, but then you can use that liquid staking token throughout DeFi. You can borrow against it, you can use it in a liquidity pool. It frees up a lot of the capital inefficiencies that would be there if you're just staking your ETH. So it was pretty natural for when restaking came around to have a similar playbook. And I think a lot of people started to front run that. So same idea as a basic idea. You have your ETH that would be just sitting in Eigenlayer, but now you have this receipt token. So you go to this one of these LRT providers, you give them your ETH, they go and restake it, and then you get this receipt token, this LRT, that is a claim on that restaked ETH. But I think it's important to draw the differences here because they are pretty similar acronyms, and I think people will think, oh, they're just the same. But there's very specific and notable differences here. So when you're buying an LST, it's like you're buying a bond. It's just going and staking on the base layer, and it's as close to the risk-free rate as you're going to get in DeFi. But when you're buying an LRT, which of these services through Eigenlayer are you going to secure? It's not really going to be up to you for most of these providers. It's going to be up to the DAO or whoever runs these providers to secure which networks. Like, do you want to secure this bridge or this DA layer or this Oracle network? It's kind of up to somebody because you can do one, you can do all of them, but it's kind of a question of risk management. So that's why I put here in the slide, LST is like buying a bond, and LRT is like you're hiring a portfolio manager. So I think it's important to contextualize that because it's very different. It's not the same level of risk. Not every LRT is going to have the same level of risk. They're not going to have the same APY. They're going to be very different. I think it's important as you go into this, and once these actively validated services, these AVSs come online, there's going to be a lot of questions on which of them to secure through which LRT. And yeah, that's going to be the main question because the more you secure, the more you make, but there's also more risk that comes along with that, probably. Does that make sense?
So yeah. So just to kind of recap and go through the kind of user journey. So like, let's just say you bought some ETH on, I don't know, centralized exchange, or you swapped some USDC for ETH on Uniswap or whatever. You're happy that that's a decent amount. Now you want to go and take that to any liquid staking provider on the market currently. Maybe you're looking at one for the lindiness. Maybe you're going for Lido, so you go with staked ETH. Maybe you're going for Rocket Pool ETH because you like the decentralized nature of the protocol. Maybe you're going for Swell's liquid staking token because they have their Pearl program and you're expecting an airdrop. So a plethora of LSTs on the market. You're going to receive your liquid staking, basically a receipt of your deposit into their protocol. And then with LRTs, you're going to then go and restake that into one of these actively validated services, which, as 563 said, could be a wide variety of products that all require some form of decentralization of their actual validator set, where that may be a bridge, Oracle, an L2, like we're seeing, anything that needs a decentralized shared security system where they can leverage your restaked ETH, then it's all to play for. There's some stuff that I can't even imagine or hasn't even been probably thought of yet that they're probably going to be rehypothecating the ETH for. The design space is very, very, very young. We're seeing a lot of kind of clones in the space of what the restaked ETH can actually be used for. But I think as these new primitives come online, the design space opens massively and new products emerge. So that's a kind of high level user kind of flow or journey, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. All
All
right.
right. So do
So
you want
what's
to get
next?
on to do you want to get onto like kind of the extent of this? Like if we just kind of take a look at Maker used to be top on a curve on Maker used to be top if I kind of remember correctly. And now if we look back,
You mean in
so
TVL?
Maker, yeah, on DeFi Llama. And then obviously last year following the merge, Lido basically 3x TVL of the nearest protocol on Ethereum. But what always baffles me is, and I know the switch to proof of stake is relatively new, but this staking rewards. Let's see if this brings it up. So these show other proof of stake networks or delegated proof of stake networks, and the really interesting thing about ETH, despite liquid staking, liquid restaking, all the kind of weird onion layers on top of ETH. And maybe it is just primarily down to being a relatively new pivot. But where is it showing the staking rate? So staking ratio, basically saying 24.71% is staked, or a percentage of eligible tokens are staked. If you look at basically everything else, Solana 68.16, that might be a little bit funky because of you were recording this basically 2 days after the downtime issue. Sui 82.74, Cardano 64 point. So basically, there's a bit of a trend here. A lot of other proof of stake networks are at least 2x, if not 3x higher on the amount of eligible tokens staked. Now, there are some shenanigans that might be going on here, particularly with the likes of Sui, Aptos, and any new stay, for example. And by that I mean if early investors, founders have very favorable terms where their locked tokens can be staked on the network, because
Yep.
that happens. That could be skewing the data slightly. So you have to kind of take that into account. But even still, like there is a huge disparity between the amount of ETH staked compared to native ETH compared to a lot of other proof of stake networks. And I think it's always worthwhile to point that out because surely we're only going to see that continue to increase.
Yeah, you have to remember that a lot of these networks don't have a lot to do. You can't do much on
Yeah.
Celestia besides stake. So
Inscriptions.
yeah, you can do inscriptions, but there's not many uses for TIA beyond staking. That's what I mean. And Ethereum
Exactly.
just having moved to proof of stake, it makes sense that they're a little behind on the staking rate. But if you think of instead of using ETH throughout DeFi, you can use stETH or a liquid restaking token throughout DeFi. Then it starts becoming a little more interesting where a larger percentage will be staked in the network, securing the network. But you also have that double-edged sword of, okay, if it's being rehypothecated, is there additional risk on the consensus? And that's Vitalik's worry about restaking. And we can talk about that later. But I think that's why there's a major discrepancy in the staking rate, just because there already was a lot you could do with ETH throughout Ethereum and not a ton you could do with these other native gas tokens.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sol have they're beginning to have a lot of different use cases, and I think you can attribute a lot of Lido's growth down to like they weren't the first. Like
Right.
Rocket Pool were around earlier, if not a couple of years earlier, even if it was just the conception of the idea, they BD'd everyone out the water.
Yeah.
They made sure that you could get staked ETH as collateral on Aave, on Compound, on.
Yes.
They were kind of the first people who were pushing for liquid staking to go to the L2s, and maybe I don't know, they just seem to kind of outmaneuver people on that front, and with that obviously becomes like where you get this like crazy kind of power law distribution with Lido, which is obviously a lot of cause for concern as well. You've seen a lot of pushback on that, which I think we've covered previously, but it's going to be really, really interesting to see how. You can probably imagine a world where liquid staking and liquid restaking are probably in the top two categories, just because of the sheer size and the sheer kind of, I don't know, rehypothecation due to its very nature. But it's going to be interesting to watch because it still really, really is early days.
Yeah, and I think it was the integrations that helped them a lot too. If you can't do anything with this rehypothecated token, then what's the use of it? But I think they were the first to get on these lending networks so people can actually take out leverage, and to make your token as useful as possible. I think is the big BD game in the early days, and a lot of the LRTs are taking a lot of the same strategy. So we can start talking about the differences between all of these. I think if you want to. So there's a
Yeah.
couple different types of LRTs. People will toss around to different nomenclature. So in Eigenlayer, you can either deposit.
more words to
Yeah,
remember for everyone
it's
who's
just
listening.
ridiculous. So we'll briefly talk about what the differences are. So a native LRT, and there's native, basket, isolated, and superfluid are the main ones that people will talk about. Yeah, I know it's a lot. But in Eigenlayer, you can either deposit an LST, so you can deposit like stETH or RETH or StakeFrax ETH or a bunch of different types. You can deposit one of those, or you can spin up your own Eigenpod, is what they call it. Basically, if you have 32 ETH ready, like a full validator's worth, you can natively restake. That's what they call it. And that's obviously a little bit tough to do if you don't have 32 ETH lying around. But a lot of these LRT protocols will just grab 32 ETH from a bunch of different depositors and spin up their own Eigenpods. So that's called native liquid restaking tokens, or NLRTs. You could have a basket approach. So you could have an LRT that is secured or backed by a bunch of different types of LSTs or ETH. So your one basketized LRT could be half backed by stETH, a quarter backed by RETH, and so on. There's some questions on if that is more risky, because if there's a depeg or an issue with one of those LST backings, then there's a depeg risk for your LRT. And that's why isolated LRTs are out there too. So you could see LRTs that are specifically backed by specific LSTs. So I know a couple of different projects are doing that. And then superfluid LRTs are something that's not really a thing yet, but Eigenlayer is going to soon accept, instead of just straight up ETH or LSTs, they're going to accept liquidity positions that are completely ETH or LST. So if you have an ETH stETH LP position, you could restake that, because if you think about it, at the base layer, it's ETH in the end. It's a little bit couple layers of abstraction, and that worries some people. But you could use that LP elsewhere throughout DeFi. So it's basically a yield generating token on top of a yield generating token. And that's super fluid. They call it super fluid anyway. And that allows for some additional building blocks to be made. Oh yeah, I love this Dune board, by the way.
Great dash.
Hashed. Yeah, it's awesome.
The so that those super fluid LRTs, so maybe that's a ETH staked ETH position, or however you want to kind of mangle it together.
Yeah, that the only one I know doing that.
Keep an eye on the collateral on something like a tapioca, because those guys are wild and like to push the boundaries of what's possible. So being able to
Ooh.
loop that, it's just like, ooh, now we're doing DeFi.
No, it's yeah. Now we're pod racing, man. It's gonna get a little spicy. There's a couple projects in the list here that we're gonna talk about that get a little spicy, but that's what DeFi is all about. just iterate until it breaks. And I think we're going to get to that point eventually. But yeah, if you want, we can start diving into the different projects here because there's a lot. But so I think we can just
Yeah.
talk about
Like,
the major ones.
yeah, yeah. Do you
Okay.
wanna kick us off?
Yeah. So I mean, EtherFi is the biggest one right now by TVL. I think I refreshed it this morning. They're pushing on $800 million locked, well, locked, in their ETH, EtherFi ETH LRT. They were pretty early to the market. I think they spun up deposits like early last year, which is really early. They allow
Yeah, yeah.
for native restaking, so you can just deposit ETH. A big benefit of that is because we're in these early stages of Eigen Layer. They have caps on your LST deposits, so it's always a big deal when the caps get raised. And they think they just temporarily remove the caps, so it's Eigenlayer is going insane on TVL. I think they passed 4 billion this morning, and it's just, yeah, it's crazy. But anyway, if you have a native restaking protocol, you don't have to worry about the caps because you can just do the Eigen pods and restake your ETH, and you don't have to worry about that layer of smart contract risk you get from having an LST in the middle. But yeah, they also have this SEMA registered agent, so institutions can easily connect with EtherFi. So they have that angle too. And right now they're the leader in TVL, so I think they're definitely one to watch.
Yeah, that's a first movers are such a. I know it's first mover in basically any industry is big, but when a lot of the products look near enough identical, being like having that first mover advantage is so key. Like these are 798 million TVL, 1 month change, 474%. Obviously, that's down to the Eigen caps getting increased. What day did they actually remove the cap? What day are we on now? Seventh? Was it the fifth?
I think it was, yeah. I think it was the fifth.
So it's
Um,
just gonna go kind of ham, isn't it, at this point in time?
yeah, I mean, it's tough for a lot of these protocols to differentiate themselves ahead of the AVS actually going live. Um, right? Because they don't really get to test their restaking strategy until Eigenlayer is fully launched and it's actually able to restake for other services. So you don't know like what the APRs are going to be like for these LRTs yet because Eigenlayer is not fully live. It's just about the branding, the BD, and differentiating yourself enough from the competition. And a lot of them don't, I don't think. But these top ones,
No.
they definitely do.
So I haven't looked into Kelp. I've seen it come up a lot, but
Yeah.
is there anything kind of unique here?
Yeah, they were actually, it's the same founders as Stater. So if you've heard of
Okay.
ETHX, or they actually, I think they had started out on Terra. I think that's where I first saw them. They had Luna X, my first introduction to LSTs. But they've been around for a while. So they have a trusted team. They have a lot of integrations and partnerships throughout the industry. So they're definitely one of the front runners. They have a lot of experience working with these validator operators, so they are able to leverage a lot of those connections. Yeah, theirs is the RS ETH, so restaked ETH. Very good name. That
Oh,
helps a lot too. Um,
does.
it does. It's ridiculous because there's so many different names for these LRTs. I have a list in the slides, but it's insane. But anyway, yeah. So KelpDAO with their RS ETH, they're doing pretty well so far. I think they were number two. They just got passed. I think they're number three right now. Um, yeah, so one to watch, KelpDAO in the Stater
And
team.
another great name is Renzo's with Easy ETH.
Easy ETH, love it. That's probably my favorite one
That's
for the name.
Yeah, that's my favorite too. And they've got great branding as well.
Yeah,
But it
branding's
literally
important.
at this point it is those kind of like they've obviously looked at the landscape, seeing everything coming to market at the same time. It's just like at this point in time, there is hardly any distinguishing factors or differentiators between a lot of these. So like all these kind of little 1% improvements kind of add up, I think, particularly from like outside looking in. But that easy ETH, top notch. Well played.
Yeah, you need a way to differentiate yourself, even if it is your branding.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, it's important to remember that all these programs or all these providers have these points programs going on right now. Besides the couple that have actual tokens, they all have points. So they're all trying to gamify this a bit. And I think that's going to be honestly the name of the game for a lot of these. Just differentiate yourself through the points program. Um, but yeah, KelpDAO has their miles. EtherFi has points. Renzo has easy points. Very good on brand. But Renzo is trying to differentiate themselves because they focus on their risk-adjusted returns for their AVS providers. So that whole idea is for every unit of risk you're taking on, you should have a proportional amount of return for that risk. Like you shouldn't chase returns that aren't worth the risk. And that's, I mean, it's kind of obvious, but they're working on an engine in the background to automate that from the DAO level. So I think that's pretty cool. It kind of goes back to the whole LRTs are like hiring a portfolio manager because they're trying to automate that portfolio manager for you. They don't want it to be up to a DAO that's just has ulterior motives or they have no idea what they're doing, or it's up to some shadow government somewhere that picks the AVS to support. So I like that they're trying to do that pretty well. And they also recently announced a partnership with Connex to make their Easy ETH token omni-chain, so you can restake natively through Arbitrum, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, basically, you're getting a fight between on one end of the spectrum, you've got how can we gain the most amount of TVL by playing the Ponzinomics game? Then somewhere in the middle, you've got people who are just, as I say, undifferentiated, and then you've got the kind of people who are looking to kind of distinguish themselves and actually go and do something a little bit different. I do like how Renzo are positioning themselves, and they seem like from speaking to them, and I think Dan's been speaking to them a lot as well. I think they're going to come on the podcast.
Yeah, Dan's really
Just
bullish.
good operators. You know, like there's no kind of you kind of sometimes just pick up like someone's just latching onto like a latest narrative to kind of ride the hype cycle. None of that from like behind the curtain, if that makes any sense. So yeah, quietly optimistic on this one.
Yeah, there are definitely some in this list that are only pivoting because either they didn't find product market fit in their previous products, or they're just trying to ride the coattails of Eigen Layer. And you can
It's
read
this or
between
an
the
L2.
lines. Yeah,
They were doing this, so they were pivoting to an L2.
yeah. Or if they haven't already pivoted to AI, they're on this now.
Yeah,
It's,
yeah.
um,
um,
yeah. So
what's
these
that?
are So these are the important ones anyway. So I think next we can talk about Vector and get this one squared away. So this is the superfluid one. So their LRT is actually a liquidity position that's backed by another whole swath of ETH derivatives. So it's backed by ETH itself, so just wrapped ETH. It's backed by LST and it's backed by LRTs. So you could deposit Easy ETH, you could deposit EETH or RSETH, and get their token VETH, their LRT. These guys have some questionable background. Um, there's a lot of connections being made between these guys and the Olympus DAO team, which, I mean, look, there's a place in the market for this, to be sure.
Great number go up technology.
Yeah, that's the whole idea is the whole idea behind LRTs being super risky. If you don't think they're super risky, then this maximalist point of view totally makes sense. It's like, why are we being super risk averse when all of the entire history of Ethereum slashing has boiled down to one ETH being slashed? Like that's about how much has been slashed throughout the entire history of proof of stake is about one ETH. So if you think Restaking
Just
is
being a
on the
spreadsheet.
same. What's that?
It just being a spreadsheet.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, anyway. It's so if you think restaking is going to be on the same order of magnitude of risk, then it makes sense to dial this thing up to 11 and go with Vector's ideas of basketizing it all. There's also some bribing mechanics. So VEC is their governance token that's live now. You can lock it, and in the future, they're going to have a bribe market where LRT and LST providers can bribe these VE-VEC holders to vote for their pools on different like pools like on Curve and other dexes to bootstrap the liquidity for those LRTs and LSTs. So it's trying to make their token the gateway to liquidity for these LRTs. They're also using some aggressive treasury techniques in their treasury to boost up their treasury. So they're going to be using lending markets to borrow against the backing. So the lending markets to borrow against LRTs and LSTs. They're going to use some. So if an LRT or LST becomes depegged, they're going to arbitrage that peg. But you have to remember
the P-Pods integration is quite interesting.
Yeah, it's Peapods is trying to jump on a lot of different things. They're being opportunistic. I like to see that. Pretty cool because I saw them just jump on Pandora as well. It's like, wow, they're doing
Exactly. Yeah.
everything that's hot. It's pretty fast for those teams to pivot. It's pretty cool. But yeah, Vector, it's a maximalist point of view. And yeah, they're using some bonding too. So they're trying to build up this treasury in order to have this sway throughout the market where they can go and bribe whoever they want. But it's interesting. It's one of the few LRT providers that actually has a token that's live. So you can kind of see how the market's thinking about what these tokens will mean. We only had restake finance tokens. So was it the RSTK token that was live? And that's one way that people were betting on the success of Eigen Layer. And now we have another one. So we'll see what kind of ratios happen from that.
You see huge interest, even just from a perspective. Restake, I think initially LBP'd at like 10 cents and it's like $2.50 or something. So like
Oh
there was
yeah,
really a lot of
tons of
attention
interest.
around that. What was
It's the only
interesting, I
avenue.
think. Yeah, well, it's like, and then you can kind of see people trying to like shoehorn protocols in to kind of express their kind of market interest, and then I think there was a little bit of a fallout between them and Vector recently. I don't know if
Yeah,
they were going to have like, I don't know what's gone on there.
I think a lot of the restake um, DAO participants weren't too happy with the deal they were being offered. I think they were going to be diluted, and they're trying to renegotiate. I think that's the drama anyway. I didn't really read too much into it. They're only
Yeah,
recently going live with their actual LRT too, so it's pretty early days for restake finance.
yeah. Who
So
got
that's
next?
Vector. I guess next up we can talk about Swell. They're probably the biggest, most well-known team entering the game. It's kind of interesting to see that a lot of these LST providers aren't pivoting, or at least starting to accept LRTs, given how big it's going to be. But I think they're
Yeah,
just trying to
what would have
protect their
happened if
brand.
Lido just
Yeah,
said, well, what? Do you think they're already kind of pushing their luck with the Ethereum community with how much market share they've gobbled up with LSTs, where it just could be too like systematic risk could just be too great?
maybe. I don't know because like the LDO token holders have definitely expressed interest in not self-limiting. So I don't know why they wouldn't.
Yeah,
Um,
99.8% of them expressed their interest in not
yeah.
on the recent proposal.
So I don't know.
I
I
don't
would
know.
I
What if they
wouldn't.
just turn it on one day?
That's that's my question and somewhat my worry. I think it's a lot of people's worry, just because you're at that point your Ethereum consensus is going to be all in the hand. Well, not all in the hands, but largely in the hands of the DAO, kind of. Obviously, there's a bunch of different operators providing for Lido, but it's still one token governance that is in charge of all of them. So it's an interesting problem. It's better than having like a Coinbase or a Binance be that person or be that entity, for sure, but still not ideal. But anyway, yeah. So Swell is the biggest one, and they're accepting. Well, they're starting to roll out their R suite, so RSW ETH. Yeah.
There's a really interesting stat on Swell which I came across.
Look at that TVL.
Yeah, that's not
Over 1 million
so
ETH.
wild. But Swell, number 2, I believe. Steve.
Yeah.
Swell.
Yeah, they're number 2. Interesting. Because I guess they were the biggest one with a points program that were allowed into Eigen Layer
Yeah.
as an LST.
Because I suppose they'd already had that proven track record of they'd laid the groundwork in the liquid staking realm, and then
Right.
hadn't. The beauty of points is the opaque nature of them, and this is the difference between airdrops and points, and like liquidity mining and points. If you find halfway through your liquid staking points program that, ooh, we might actually get an extra couple of months out of this to a slight pivot towards liquid restaking, we can just dilute the initial points to the amount of tokens that we were going to distribute, and then allocate some of those points, some of those tokens to points from this liquid restaking. The opaque nature of points leaves it very, very flexible, and I think these guys have capitalized on that extremely well. So 462 million, nailed it, absolutely nailed
Yeah.
it.
No, I mean, right. Good on them, really. I mean, if you even look at the next couple in that list, you have ETHX, so that's staters, and you have Meth, who is also trying to. Well, no, they're just going with the the Eigenlayer deposits natively, aren't they?
So what's interesting about Mantle ETH, is obviously the product that came out of the Mantle camp. What they're saying is ETH staked on the L2 through their liquid staking protocol. Users don't need to then head over to Eigenlayer to deposit. They want the MEF to stay in the ecosystem. So the deposits are going to be matched by the Mantle team, and then any Eigenlayer points or subsequent distribution of Eigen token will kind of effectively be snapshotted for the people who are still in the Mantle ecosystem with their MEF. So what they didn't want to happen is, oh shit, we've provided liquid staking token in MEF, and we've also got this allocation on Eigenlayer. We don't want everyone to take the TVL from Mantle and go and sit it in Eigenlayer. What's the point of that?
Right.
So they just said, we're going to take up the allocation. We're not going to actually take any of the points, and we're going to actually distribute to people who stay on the L2, which I think is really smart.
Yeah, it's really
Hence,
smart.
hence why you see here 0 withdrawn.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, I wonder if that's gamified at all with the 0 withdrawn, but still, yeah, no, it makes sense, and that's why you're kind of doubling up on the points, right? You're for Sweep at least, you can restake that way, or you can just buy the LRT, which I think is why the LRT for Swell is somewhat slow going, even though it's a big one. But I
Yeah.
think it'll catch on because they're huge. They have tons of institutional interest, tons of DeFi partnerships already. So definitely one to watch. They're taking a measured approach. They formed this liquid restaking council to help advise their strategy. So that's like a lot of the different players in the Eigenlayer ecosystem are advising on that.
Smart.
Yeah, it is smart. So they're trying to take a measured approach. I think for pearl farmers, you might already be diluted if you're going in some of these. Like there's giant whales have already been sitting on sweet for a long time. So there's something to consider there if you're trying to just farm these points. But if you think Swell is going to be the winner take all, then that's something to consider too. Like we said with the power law, Swell is definitely a contender there.
And the meth one was interesting off the back of that because I don't know how long, like what the period of time left on it is, but they were effectively paying double APR on ETH, or double APY on ETH.
Yeah.
And basically that was boosted by, I think, the Mantle treasury. So you're
Yep.
earning double APR on their Eigen points and rewards, and then you still got the full composability and flexibility and optionality of being in an ecosystem where you can come play around with whatever you want to play around with. So like people are getting smart and inventive, and the kind of game theory off the back of how do you get people to stick around and how do you get that stickiness. And you know fine well is if you get people to use a product and that muscle memory builds up, you do get retention.
Absolutely.
It's whether after all this plays out and Eigen token goes live, like where does the rebalancing come? Does Steve just become like the major deposit? Does it gain even further market share? Like what the hell happens there? Well, still to be
Yeah, no,
decided.
it's interesting for sure. I think Jordy meth pilled you on the mantle stuff,
Oh,
but
he did. Yeah, of course he did.
no, but they have that giant war chest, so it's hard to count them out for sure. I think incentives are the name of the game always. So $2 billion is quite the incentive, or whatever they have now. It's ridiculous amounts of money in their war chest. But yeah, do you want to hop over to the next one?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one because the Magpie guy is just going to continually and perpetually create new products forever with
Yeah,
new
I think
tokens.
so.
So
It keeps working.
that's great.
It's
How are
it's
they getting away with this?
you know, I'm kind of two minds when it comes to sub-DAO tokens because I would always assume that you want one token and I'll have all the value accrue to that. Um,
Yeah,
but I guess
exactly.
if you want to segmentize risk or you're trying to specify what type of investment you want, then maybe sub-DAO tokens make sense. Okay, anyway, we're talking about Magpie and their implementation of Eigenpie, by the way. It's a new sub-DAO
Great name
by
to be fair.
Magpie. Yeah, we kind of just dove in. Magpie also has sub-DAOs for Pendle, for Radiant, for a few others, and they focus on a bunch of different emerging ecosystems. Um, so Eigenpie specifically, they're working on a set of isolated LRTs. So if you go in, you'd be able to see, oh, there you go, there's a bunch. Yeah. So if you go into the Eigenpie one, yeah, they specific on isolated liquid restaking. Oh, my other page doesn't work. It's awkward. But anyway.
I think it was a backlink to Twitter. But,
Oh, okay. I'm surprised they don't have.
away Phantom.
The,
334 million TVL. Where is Eigenpie in here?
I'm surprised it's not front and center.
Maybe it's a different site. And by oh right, okay. Bear with me while I scroll through these 4,000 links.
You have to go to their Twitter, I guess. Their countdown. Okay, no, you're good.
There
You're
you go.
good.
Have a look at that website. Okay, there we go. Phantom, go away.
Oh, there you go.
Okay,
So
here we
yeah,
go.
there you go. So you can
Look at
deposit
that.
yeah, nice, some rare, very juicy TVL. So you can deposit a bunch of different liquid staking tokens in here, and you get their respective isolated LRTs. So if you deposit Mantle staked Ether, I think you get M meth, or if you deposit Rocket Pool Ether, you get M Reef. So it's backed one-to-one with these underlying LSTs. So that kind of isolates your smart contract risk. So if something sketchy happens over on Coinbase, they stop honoring deposits or something, you're not going to be screwed if you're in your M Steth, whatever. That's the idea anyway.
what I like about this is you can sort by TVL, but status staked ETH cannot be moved.
Hilarious. I think they have a partnership with Fader. Um, but yeah, I think
I'm all for it.
yeah, the main reason why this garnered so much attention is because early depositors get whitelisted into their IDO, which is IDOing at like a $3 million FTV, which is
Oh wow,
very low compared to the
it's very
competition.
attractive.
Yeah, exactly. So that's why there's 200 million in TVL. So you're probably going to get like $10 worth of an allocation, but it's maybe it'll go up 10x and you get
We need
$100 worth.
we need to snipe that contract on launch.
It's yeah, I think hopefully it's proportional and that doesn't happen and get spotted. But anyway, I think that's why they're getting such big attention here.
Yeah, maybe there is something to this sub-DAO thing after all.
It just prints money, right? So it's
Yeah,
interesting because that's kind of the idea that who's doing it with
Maker are doing that, aren't they?
Maker is, yeah, exactly. Maker with Spark, they're doing that with the sub DAOs. I don't know. I'm kind of the mind that it makes sense to just have all the value accrue to the main token and not dilute your main token holders, but it's obviously working for some teams. So who am I to say that?
Yeah, exactly.
So
So Puff is interesting.
yeah, it's last on our
It's
list
been
here,
around
but
for a
it's
while. This.
yeah, the idea and the team have been around for a while. They just opened deposits and they absolutely went bonkers. Um, they opened up at like $100 million on the first day. It's insane. They're already number two. So like
135 million deposits in 24 hours.
oh,
That
there
is
you go. Yeah,
nuts.
you can fact check me. Yeah, it's crazy.
Oh
Over
shit.
half a bill TVL. It's already number two. Like it shot up. If you look at the chart I put on, um, like the TVLs over time, yeah, that one, that red line
Oh,
is Puffer. It looks ridiculous. And on yeah, you can go to the next chart and it's a little zoomed in because it doesn't look right. There you go. You can kind of see it. It ballooned really fast up to number two.
you know what this thinks of to me? This thinks of VC liquidity commitments for
If you
allocation.
scroll down a little bit, you can see the VCs. That's yeah. There's some big names.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. They also got an Ethereum grant from the Ethereum Foundation, so that helps them a lot.
I thought I'd personally invested there and forgot about it, but
That's just front and center grant.
yeah.
Oh, that's
But
great.
this is gonna be a good one. I can feel it in my bones. This is gonna be really, really good.
Yeah, yeah. Bankless likes these guys too. They're investors. Um, it's very much back to the decentralization maxis side of things. So they have really cool tech. So let's go through how it works. So Puffer wants to really encourage solo stakers to restake and participate. So any individual can spin up a validator by posting a 1 to 2 ETH bond. That number is being changed around a little bit, but really small amount of bond, and you can go ahead and be an operator and choose which AVSs to validate for, and it just lowers the barrier to entry a lot. So it's kind of taking the whole rocket pool approach ish, but dialing that up a little bit. And they have some really cool anti-slashing tech in there because that's usually the main worry for most
Mhm.
solo stakers. But yeah, it is just really one to watch. Obviously, there's a ton of interest because if you're already overloading the Ethereum consensus, hopefully you can do it in a decentralized manner. And that's where Puffer comes in.
Yeah, absolutely. So the what have we got left on this list?
That was all of them, but we can go with our takeaways, I think. Good way to
Yeah.
close
Do
them
you
out.
wanna wrap up with yours and then got some points
Oh, for
beyond
sure.
Ethereum?
Yeah. So the way I look at it is there's a lot of different players here. And if a new player is coming on board, but they don't have a very simple left curve idea that differentiates themselves from the pack or from the market leaders, then I'm just trying to put them out of mind because there's so many here. Um, and if you think that LRT dominance is kind of following the footsteps of LST dominance, where you have this power law distribution, you have winner take most, like with Lido, then it makes sense to track these outperformers. So right now that's EtherFi. Maybe that changes to KelpDAO, um, or even Puffer. And then Puffer, you also have this decentralization maxi angle too, because you're already overloading the Ethereum consensus somewhat from restaking because you're putting a lot of ETH at risk of these other consensus that you're securing. So maybe by decentralizing that middle layer of Eigen Layer, maybe that helps things. So maybe Puffer is way to look there. And then if you take it from the approach of a portfolio manager, I think Renzo has a lot of cool ideas with their portfolio management techniques. And that's also one to watch that we're watching closely. And if you want to take it the complete degen angle, which it probably where it'll devolve to eventually, people will see high APYs and buy that one without doing a lot of DD. But even if you think that all of these folks have it wrong and it's going to be safer than people think and they're overblowing how much risk is involved with restaking, and especially because Eigenlayer is going to have a layer of social consensus where if there's a mass slashing event and a lot of people are affected, Eigenlayer can step in and make people whole and turn off that turn off that major slashing if there's something fishy going on with that AVS that's done this major slashing. But if you think that is more likely, Vector Reserve is the most degen play, and it's going to have I'm calling it now. It's going to have the highest APYs just because they're taking on the most risk, and more risk, more reward. Who's to say if that risk is worth the reward? But we'll see. So that's basically how I'm thinking about it. Just pay attention to top few and the different ways these guys can decentralize or differentiate themselves from one another.
So my kind of where I want to wrap up is just because this episode has been very much Ethereum centric. I think there is a lot to be said about looking further afield at other networks and other ecosystems. And I didn't think Eigenlayer would do this. And I actually wrote it in the 2024 thesis, and then I had to go in and delete the line before. My idea was Eigenlayer are very, very Ethereum aligned, which is kind of a term that gets thrown around a lot recently.
Yep.
I wouldn't foresee them tackling any other kind of ecosystems. Basically, as soon as I typed that out, I looked on Twitter and they'd said, "Oh, we're bringing restaked ETH to Cosmos." I was like, "Oh, well, I'm an idiot." So,
well, I think that's more about the AVSs that are building on top of Eigenlayer, to be fair.
yeah, yeah. So it's what? How far and wide can this thing actually go? And from like Eigenlayer's perspective, there are networks that can one reduce their capital cost to secure their network by the already boatloads of staked Ethereum and tap into the shared security through the likes of Eigenlayer. I think Sommelier might be doing that. And you've got to kind of think about it from
Really?
a security perspective. If you're, let's say there's how many new networks are they popping up on Cosmos every single day?
Yep.
I think it's absolute. And how do you go and secure that? You spin up your validator sets, you try and decentralize, you give very, very nice pushy rewards to your early validators and the validator rounds. And at what cost does that come from the protocol? And is there an argument to be made for potential death spiral if tokens are drastically over emitted and there's a bit of a Ponzi game there? Do you need to keep continually buy to kind of stake to actually secure the network to any meaningful TVL where um, the cost of attack would actually be like actually feasible? So,
Right.
so there's going to be more and more networks that actually look to use restaked ETH as maybe it's just they just use that. Maybe it's a dual token model, which I can kind of see a lot of people already kind of eyeing up. But there is a shit ton of ETH that could be definitely rehypothecated to secure other networks.
Right.
So I'm seeing that. I think people who do that could get a lot of buy-in from the largest community in the space, which I think is quite an interesting kind of angle. We'll have to see how that plays out. As soon as one does it, I think a lot of people are going to do it. But then it comes down to, well, what's the utility of your own token? Token not needed. So there's
Yeah.
going to be a lot of these strange little games that come around on that. Do you have any thoughts on that? I don't know if you'd covered that aspect of it in the reports or anything.
Yeah. I mean, that kind of goes back to, yeah, for the why I need a token. That's kind of how these AVSs are paying for everything. So either they're emitting ETH or they're emitting their own token to these restakers that are securing their network. Um, but yeah, that's an open question. Like a lot of apps probably don't need tokens, other beyond like rewards for validators.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so, and then the other one that I thought was a little bit interesting, a little bit adjacent was what about native restaking from other ecosystems and they, I don't know, maybe some Cosmos L1s, maybe Solana, you've seen Picasso Network. They actually created like a liquid staking dot token and then they've since rolled out that similar sort of product for Solana and they said they're bringing restaking to Solana. So you're going to see MSOL, BSOL, I think Lido have kind of wound down their operation there, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. Jito Sol all bundled up and then rehypothecated for, I don't know, maybe it's oracles, bridges, or whatever into the Solana ecosystem. So that's quite interesting. Don't know if they've pivoted a billion times, these guys, so read in between the lines a little bit on that. And a few others that I found coming out of me and 563 have an extra special tool that nobody's going to find out about. And even the past couple of days, there were a couple that popped up on there. So
Oh, really?
Redo Finance, I don't know if you've seen that one.
No.
Another bit of alpha that I checked the stats on the post. There was 700 people that seen the tweet. But if anyone remembers Unsheath, which was an index of liquid staking tokens, they're
Right.
working on a liquid restaking index, which could be quite interesting as a way to distribute risk if it's kind of packaged into one token. A lot to be desired there and see if they can actually bring them to market. But there's a lot of people, as you said, those pivots are actually going on. Don't think people have realized that they're actually building that. Genesis, LRT, what were my notes on this? So unlocking liquidity for restake on Eigen Layer through liquid restaking token. Much of a muchness to what we've recently covered.
Yeah. I'm not
Um,
gonna FUD those guys,
Primes.
but they were not very responsive in their Discord, so I didn't include them.
Ooh. um,
My ticket has been open for a couple weeks now, so please answer me.
Prime Stake. I know you had them on the list, and they'll be included in the report, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
No, I don't know these
Another
guys.
very Prime. I'll send you a few on DMs.
Prime State.
Another really interesting one is Berachain with infrared and Beradrome. So there's without going too much into detail, there's a tri token model on Berachain, which will be um, Bera, Honey, and BGT. So BGT is actually a non-transferable token,
Mhm.
and it's the governance token. It can be converted into um, converted into Bera, but there's a project called Infrared, which I'd go and follow and try and get as much alpha on them as physically possible, where they're actually going to turn this into a liquid staking and liquid restaking through Beradrom's new product. So Beradrom actually started off as a Velodrome fork and realized there's too many dexes, and they're actually really funny, and tried to purposely throw people off that people are going to think they're another DEX, but they're actually not. They're a liquid staking, liquid restaking provider
That's
now.
okay.
And
That's
their
new.
community is called the low IQ community. So, it's like they're doing this extreme anti-marketing where they call the community low IQ and call their product something that it isn't, which is kind of hilarious. So there's stuff going on over there. There's Layerless, so LAYERLESS, omnichain liquid restaking, keeping your Eigen Layer deposits liquid and usable beyond Ethereum. That's quite interesting. Picks and shovels players in between. We've mentioned Pendle. There's going to be a lot of yields and a lot of fluctuating yields between that get kind of changed by deposits, by points, by different incentivization programs. So Pendle's going to see a shit ton of traction, I think, because that's all about trading your principal token and your yield token, and
They already
any
have.
predictive yield's going to, yeah,
Their growth
it's
is hockey stick, man.
absolutely
They're
killing
the
it. It's absolutely. Have you seen their landing page at the minute? They have just like uh, they've lent so heavily into it, and they just
using
nailed it.
Google for links, man. That's scary.
Yeah, this is my browser. These are dead wallets. So I don't
Oh,
actually
okay,
have
okay.
anything on these. Yeah.
Oh, nice.
But
The
look at
pop
this.
up. Yeah.
Look at this.
Nice.
On board now, and then see what the
Oh.
other it says on board now. The other button says, "Oh, it's okay. I'll get the next one."
Oh man. Yeah, no,
um,
I mean Pendle's the real winner here. They're just absorbing
yeah,
all the TVL, all the
yeah,
fees because the multipliers. And like you see with KelpDAO, you get 3x multiplier on the points. So if you're not doing that, you're being diluted. So it's
exactly.
brilliant from Pendle.
And then the only other one, which is kind of been catching a little bit of a bid, but what is it doing today? Where's my trading view at?
Oh, Maverick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so Maverick,
I drew that same line.
purely digit. It's a great
Yeah,
banana line, isn't
yeah,
it? Purely down to its very, very, very unique uncertain liquidity design, and they're expecting a lot of very interesting kind of deposits of ETH, maybe staked ETH, LST versus LRT liquidity positions across Maverick. So that's kind of talk of the town. That's probably yet to be seen. You'd probably
yeah.
expect a lot of people just to deposit on UniV3 and have maybe a concentrated liquidity manager look after that. But
I think
so those are
Maverick
a
and
couple that I've been
Curve,
picking up off the back of it.
Maverick and Curve are
Curve
really
sound,
going to duke it out because
yeah.
that's kind of the same area, right? So are there going to be Curve Wars V2 or are we going to go into the Maverick Wars? And I think that's kind of why Vector is going towards this bribing model of
Mm,
you want to
they
have
know what's
that
coming down
war
the pipe.
chest. Yeah, you want to have that war chest of these tokens so you can bribe appropriately. And they want to be the place to go to bribe. So it's interesting because liquidity is the name of the game for a lot of these pegged assets.
Has to be.
It
Yeah.
has to be.
All right. Is that us?
I think so, man. Yeah, we covered hopefully everything. Droned on for about an hour, so hopefully there's some useful nuggets of information in there.
If you're still listening now, give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, kudos
And
to you
earn
guys.
some points. Earn some Blockmates points by listening
Yeah,
to the
sure.
end. No, that was great. There is a very, very, very well written liquid restaking report. This one going behind the mail deal.
Yeah, that's to be determined right now. It might. So incentivized meal deal.
Yeah. So earn
Um,
points by listening.
yeah, if you listen this far, I don't know, need a discount or
But yeah,
something.
yeah, the we'll try and chance some